God, is that Avery?
It's time for the very first episode of the new series, 103 Amazing Facts About the Black Indian of the Western Hemisphere. It was originally written by Wanstachin P. Canyon in the year 2003. I updated, illustrated, and demonstrated it for you beginning in the year 2020. So, we're going to go ahead and get straight to it, all right, y'all? Number one, the Black Indian has been living in the Western Hemisphere since time immemorial. And below that, what you're looking at is an Ica Stone that is estimated to be 250 million years old. Now, I know that sounds a little out of the park for you, but I'm going to prove it to you today. All right, and there is evidence all throughout the Americas that people have been around for hundreds of millions of years. So what we're going to do today is show you a couple of things and see if we can't all get a little better educated about the fact that we're a lot older than we've been told.
Thousands of carved rocks called the Ica Stones suggest that eons ago, humankind had already mastered astronomy, medicine, and even aerodynamics. If the Ica Stones are genuine, every history book in the world will have to be rewritten.
And inside of these images, what you will find out is that these Amaru people, corresponding with the Mayan calendar that were already here, depicted themselves interfacing with these Jurassic prototypical animals, Jurassic meaning dinosaurs. I have in the book that I'm looking at right now, 27 glyphs etched into a stone that is called andesite, used to depict these particular things. All right. The other part of this discussion that is important is not only do they depict Jurassic animals, and Jurassic animals would have lived, according to modern data, 213 million years ago. They're the only ones on the planet that depict these particular things in carvings and etched glyph work that is not Paleolithic in the sense of made by people who are not necessarily at the level of intelligence that we are. No, these are glyphs that are very clear, that you can see, and they are beautiful pieces of artwork that, according to modern standards, would be 213 million years old. Find me somebody on the earth that has that. You won't find it.
I traveled to the small, bustling town of Ica in central Peru and was surprised to find that perhaps the greatest archaeological discovery of the 20th century was not being kept in a guarded vault or an illustrious university, but in the private museum of Dr. Javier Cabrera. There, I found these carved stones, about 15,000 of them, that Dr. Cabrera claims were largely discovered in the nearby mountains in the mid-1960s. The Ica Stones depict knowledge that ancient peoples are not supposed to possess. Here, a prehistoric astronomer studies a comet through a telescope. This is a view of the Earth, complete with all 7 continents as seen from space. There are scenes of sophisticated medical procedures as performed by ancient surgeons.
Dr. Cabrera, this is obviously a surgery here. What do we see here?
Transplant of cerebro.
Of the brain?
The brain.
How old are these stones, which so accurately depict modern procedures like this heart transplant? It has been impossible to scientifically date them, but this carving of a man riding a pterodactyl seems to indicate a time well before humankind was known to walk on Earth.
Paleontologists and anthropologists tell us that the dinosaurs disappeared 65 million years ago and that man appeared during the last million years. But the stones tell us something else.
The energy of the human being.
Dr. Cabrera, a physician and professor of biology and anthropology at the University of Ica, has been vilified and ridiculed by many of his more mainstream colleagues. They contend that the Ica Stones must be fake because they contradict the known timeline of history. But adventurer and author David Childress believes that the Ica Stones are not the only potential evidence that points to the existence of an advanced prehistoric culture in Peru.
Archaeologists are starting to find out that civilizations in South America are incredibly old. yearly, they keep pushing back history and civilization in South America. I think we're going to find that there are even older civilizations than those who have been discovered so far.
Evidence of an advanced prehistoric civilization is supported by the legend of Viracocha, a mysterious stranger who was said to travel from town to town, spreading secret knowledge.
The Peruvian story of Viracocha is that Viracocha landed in the area of Ica. Perhaps someone from Atlantis or some other lost civilization is now a refugee from his own homeland because it's gone, and he literally walks the earth, going from town to town, city to city, and nation to nation, teaching the civilized arts of his ancient country.
Not only that, you say, well, maybe they're false. Maybe the stones and the etchings are false that are in this particular book that I'm mentioning the message of the engraved stones of Ica. Well, that was purported. So the author, who actually was a part of the discovery of the stones, and there are almost 20,000 of these stones that were found in Ica, Peru, sent them to be tested. All right? And when he sent them to be tested, the author, of course, here is Dr. Javier Cabrera Darquilla. He took 33 of the stones, and he took them. He had a friend that was called Louis Hachal of the Mauricio Hachal Mining Company based in Lima, Peru. So he sent them to the laboratory to get them to be tested, and they were tested by a geologist by the name of Eric Wolf. And he basically made a statement that's a part of this book. I want to read it. He basically said, this is unquestionably natural stone shaped by fluvial transport. Petrologically, I would classify them as andesites. Andesites are rocks whose components have been subjected mechanically to great pressure, which causes chemical changes to take place. In this case, the effects of the intense purification are obvious. This process has increased the compactness and specific weight. And he confirms that he would send them to the University of Bonn in West Germany. And he basically states that the rocks are from the Mesozoic era, which would align with the third era or the second era of the Mesozoic era, the Jurassic era, 213 million years ago. All right, so now we have the rocks being tested. Now, andesite is a stone that develops from volcanic rock. And on the scale, on the mole scale, which is a scale that's used to test the hardness of rocks, the rocks come up harder than granite, which means that in order to make the carvings into the stones and the etchings, which are actually pieces of art, right, artwork that are very detailed and actually very beautiful in the way that they look. They're not, caveman type of carvings. They're very artistic. The archaeological report says that the people would have to have carbon steel, diamond cutting materials, or possibly even lasers. Now, who do you know 213 million years ago, when there was supposed to be no human beings, could be using that type of technology? So right here in the Americas, you had that going on. And not only that, they made depictions of how they physically looked. I'm holding a book right now, and on the front page, you have one of the stones that depicts one of the chiefs with full garb on, with a telescope looking up into the stars, and the stars are etched onto the top of this particular stele. Who had telescopes this far, or this far back in history? There's no depictions of anybody with telescopes. So our question remains: what type of advanced civilizations existed millions and millions and millions of years ago right here, when we don't find this type of information anywhere else in the world? So again, we're dealing with evidence, very, very clear evidence of very ancient material. The oldest glyph writing today is found in Ica, Peru, on these particular stones, which make depictions of the constellations It identifies them. It makes depictions of what the people look like. It gave depictions of the animals living during that particular time. Over 17 different types of so-called prehistoric animals, which were cross-checked with the fossil record to verify that these depictions on the stones match those particular animals. So we have to ask ourselves the question, brothers and sisters. If all of this information is coming up, and we had so-called esoteric teachers, is it erroneous or is it false? Since we know for a fact that this particular information exists and has been tested.
If they are genuine, the Ica Stones will provide scientific support for what is now only legend. But to date, not one single mainstream scientist has been willing to take any serious steps toward authenticating the stones.
Dr. Cabrera's collection is so fantastic, so amazing, that official archaeologists just simply refuse to have a look at them. They're just impossible by normal historical standards. Yet what we have with Dr. Cabrera may be something that is so important in a historical way with Peru that we've got to look at it. And we've got to either authenticate once and for all these stones or disprove them.
Why do you think some scientists have been so skeptical, so slow to accept the story of the stones? Are they threatened by them?
Por cuanto los arqueólogos decían que estas piedras...
Archaeologists have said these stones are falsifications. If there's one thing I regret, it is not having someone who seconds my opinion. I am simply an isolated investigator whom others attack by saying that these images are things, in reality, that I myself ordered engraved.
Skepticism about the origin of the Ica Stones began with the discovery itself. Newspaper accounts were vague, describing the stones as part of a secret hoard found at an undisclosed location. The police, suspecting grave robbing or antiquities smuggling, interrogated Basilio Mendoza, who was said to be selling similar stones to tourists. When questioned by police, Mendoza claimed that he had carved all 15,000 of the stones himself. He also sent a confession to the newspapers. Case closed, as far as archaeologists are concerned. But before you return a verdict of guilty, consider this. If Mendoza had stuck to his original story of finding the Ica Stones at an ancient burial site, he would have been charged with a violation of the country's strict antiquities protection law, a crime punishable by a lengthy prison term. By claiming he had manufactured the stones himself, Basilio Mendoza was able to both keep out of jail and continue selling the stones.
When the stones are put in their proper order, the message I read has not only to do with Peru and its territories, but with the world. And although this sounds like an exaggeration, the universe.
Dr. Cabrera believes that his interpretation of the stones offers a challenging message about not only the past, but also the future, and that is why traditional scientists have rejected the legitimacy of the stones.
Nosotros estamos viviendo momentos.
We are living in apocalyptic times. Why? Because man has reversed the purpose of life, and selfishness is causing him to lose the balance of the planetary ecosystem. All the wise men of the world know that we are headed towards a cataclysm.
Author of Fingerprints of the Gods, Graham Hancock, has found this same apocalyptic message among the ruins of many other ancient civilizations.
We have inherited a remarkable legacy of knowledge from what appears to be a highly sophisticated and advanced civilization that was destroyed in an enormous cataclysm. And what this legacy repeatedly and urgently warns us of is that the cataclysm will recur.
These warnings may sound extreme, but there is scientific evidence that, through the millennia, major Earth changes have significantly altered our planet. What artifacts could survive this kind of global cataclysm? Not wood, not paper, but stone.
40s, 50s, and 60s, this man is that old in that era, then if I find a find that's older than that, then your whole shit is debunked. So check it out. This is them doing surgery, all right? These were found in a desert. The desert was dry, so it preserved the rock, all right? The rock is andesite. It's really hard. So now, if the people only had little small types of tools, how did they get this fine type of art on these particular things at a time where that's why they said it was fake. There's no way you can get this without certain types of advanced or modern tools to make the artwork. Then they're doing types of surgeries that were only found in modern times. And we're going to show you the proof from people who are specialists in those fields when they observe those particular things. Maps. These are maps. Look, maps that go back to almost the time when the continents were still drifting. North America, South America, and this is going towards the east. It has two sides, all right? And if these are fake, let's keep checking it. Now, you know how much I had to pay for this book, bro? The Ica Stones of Peru? This book cost me $400.
The Ica Stones of Peru, y'all.
Cost me $400. And so now it's become popular because people have been scanning it and putting it online. I got the book. When I got the book, I had to pay $400. And guess what? I had to write in Spanish to the museum for them to send me the book there. You follow me? So now, why was the book kept out of America? Look at these maps. This is what the world looks like today. This is what the map shows, all right, the continents. And you can follow the whole plate tectonics with this whole thing, all right? We all know that Pangea was real. It's real because what? The continents are what? The continents are moving this way. This is moving toward the Pacific. This is moving toward the Pacific. They're sliding, all right? So we know they were together. So if they were together, where was Africa then? The whole shit was Africa. You see what I'm saying? Where was Africa then? So if we was all over here in this part of Africa, all right, or over here, we using the name, just to use it. What the hell you look like telling me where we came from, white people? That's double talk. First you tell me all the continents was together, right? And then you tell me, well, there were no humans around. Okay, you ain't making sense. So, who's going to hoax over 20,000 stones? That's the question. It's not a hoax. How we know it's not a hoax? Check it out. The stones were seen in 1535. So when the Spanish invaded Peru, they found the stones and made records of it. Check out the sources now. Before Javier Cabrera. Javier Cabrera is the brother who got the museum. Francisco Pizarro, who was a conquistador, a Spanish conquistador, the well-known conquistador and colonel of the Spanish invading military, had a man named Father Simón de Alvata, who described the stones, and some were said to be taken back to Spain. Here's your Spanish source right here, all right? Científico describo the dinosaur, describing the dinosaurs in Ica, all right? That's one of your sources. The Inca, who were indigenous people who lived in the area, they had the stones. They were in the area, they found them then. Check it out. The stones were found by other people besides and before Javier Cabrera, including an Inca in 1517. His Spanish name when they conquered him was Juan de Santa Cruz. His indigenous name was Pachacuti Lamucu, who wrote of the others who found stones in a province called Chincha. Here's your source. These are all Spanish sources. All right, you can get these in libraries though. Screenshot them, go back to the libraries and check them out. You can actually Google these because some of these are in PDFs and files. I'm just kind of going fast so I can get through some of this. Archaeologist Alejandro Pazia Acerto of the National Archaeological Department of Peru. See, now, because it's not the National Archaeological Department of America, you're not going to take it. But this is Peru. They got scientists too. They got cities. They got buildings. They got architects. You follow me? But we ain't going to take it because it's coming from them. Published his findings on the authenticity of the stones, even recording extinct animals depicted on the stone. Llamas. All right? So whoever faked it, if they would have faked it, they would have had to know all the extinct animals. All right? That's the source. All right? Take screenshots of it. Ryan Drum, an American biologist, studied the stones at high magnification and found no evidence of forgery. This is this article, right? From the Cabrera Rocks. All right? The Peruvian Times did an article about the surgical techniques on the stones. Some of the surgical techniques were not even known at the time. All right? And look at what this guy said. Famous paleopathologist R.L. Moody studied the stones and had this to say: I believe it to be correct to state that no primitive or ancient race of people anywhere in the world had developed such a field of surgical knowledge. Their surgical attempts are truly amazing and include amputations, excisions, trephining, bandaging, bone transplants, cauterization, and other less evident procedures. All right, this is a paleopathologist.
So you may be wondering where I came up with the 250 million year old estimation. And because we'd seen one of the stones that showed, which was like Pangea, where the continents were a lot closer and missing continents on top of that, 250 seemed like a nice number considering how close they were together from that point. So as you can see, there has been a lot of controversy over the years about these stones, but there's a whole lot of evidence to prove that they are authentic. There's also a lot of people who want to act like it isn't, and there are people who claim that they made some. But the truth is, nobody makes these. Nobody in our era could have made these. They didn't understand nor know half of this information. And to me, one of the other major points about these stones is where they're found. Because let's not forget, it's not like somebody made up all of the rest of the things that's in Peru. Peru has some of the most unimaginable things all across it. Nobody can explain how it was made, when it was made, who made them. Peru has the most ancient things on the planet. There are too many examples of places and things that were created in the Andes Mountains of Peru and even in Bolivia right next to it. Nobody can duplicate this stuff. None of us are able to do this type of stuff. Okay, and that's today. Obviously, somebody with extreme abilities and intelligence built this stuff a very, very, very long time ago, and they do not have the answers. And we can't just believe what they tell us. We have to investigate for ourselves and add up information for ourselves, what makes sense.
Peru, South America, the Andes Mountains, 9,000 feet above sea level. In an area the Inca people once called the Sacred Valley, lie the ruins of the ancient city of Ollantaytambo. Once serving as both a temple and a fortress, mainstream historians claim Ollantaytambo was built around 1440 AD by the Inca Emperor Pachacuti. But some scholars believe Ollantaytambo was built upon the ruins of a far older city, one whose origins remain unknown.
The gate behind me is called the Gateway of the Gods, and it was built several thousand years before the Inca arrived here. It was built by a culture we call the Uranpacha. We give them that name because we have no idea who they were, where they came from, or where they went. It's clearly evident that the earliest parts of Ollantaytambo dates to at least 12,000 years old, if not older.
From the research I have been able to determine, this was built by the Arak civilization. The Arak people are as ancient as what would be the equivalent to Adam or the first humans.
But how could the earliest humans on Earth have produced such astonishing stonework, with massive interlocking blocks precisely fitted together? Or have constructed aqueducts and irrigation systems that still function today? Or have moved and set colossal stones of granite, each weighing more than 50 tons?
So check out Sacsayhuaman next, because this is another example of an extremely impressive build. Nothing, we can't reproduce this today. All right, check it out.
One of our personal favorite ancient sites is the ancient fortress of Sacsayhuaman. We believe this site was built an unimaginably long time ago, yet it would still be a daunting proposition for any invading party. One of the most impressive features of the site, and the reason why it is ranked as one of our favorites, is the inexplicably baffling stonework that makes up the fortress's maze of outer walls. Created without the use of mortar and encompassing some of the most astonishing ancient stonework we feel to be found anywhere on Earth. Although many other sites within Peru undoubtedly contain incredibly precise stonework, Sacsayhuaman is the jewel in the crown when it comes to the evidence for a lost advanced civilization. The largest stones in this boundary being 28 feet high, regularly academically estimated to weigh over 120 tons, with more enthusiastic estimates placing the largest stones at around the 300 to 400 ton mark. Located on the outskirts of the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, it rests on an enormous artificially leveled plateau. It consists of 3 outer barriers, gargantuan walls, 1,500 feet long and 54 feet wide, created in a strategic zigzag shape. They surround a paved area containing a mysterious circular structure. As recently mentioned in another video, there is overwhelming evidence to suggest 2 phases of building was undertaken at certain sites within Peru. We feel that the constructors of Sacsayhuaman are the same people who indeed built most of ancient Peru. This group were the ones who utilized the enigmatic protuberances even found upon the casing stones on the Great Pyramids. However, interestingly, there was another later phase, and although not as complex, still far more advanced than any academically studied ancestor who are currently claimed as the actual builders. This means that more than one ancient civilization must have called ancient Peru home. A later group re-inhabiting these sites, flourishing to a point where they were clearly inspired by the site's original builders, becoming highly capable stone builders themselves. How old is Sacsayhuaman? Who could have possibly built it? And why did they not utilize the mysterious protuberances found on much of their other stonework throughout Peru? It is, undoubtedly, one of the most incredible ancient sites still standing on our planet. And thanks to the incredible capabilities of its builders, it will remain standing for many more years to come. It is a site filled with inexplicable features.
Again, you'll see at this place, Napa and Glacier in Peru. It's up in the mountains. It's like impossible. Who could have possibly built? First of all, some of these things, like I said, they can't reproduce today. Some of this was built by the Incas. The Incas discovered a lot of this, and they built roads to and from all these different places. But things like this is beyond Inca capability. This right here was a next level technology. It's like that, and then it's up on a mountain. How did it get up there? And some of the rocks are not even the same type of rocks that are on that mountain, so it has been transported from other places and put up on this mountain and designed. This particular place, they considered it like an altar. And, that little hole back there, that's been closed up. They believe there's more things back inside of it, but somebody closed it up. But this right here, this is the altar, and it's looking over a cliff. Oh my God, that's so crazy. It's beautiful, but wow, who could have built that? Who could have built that? And even the Incas did a good job with their add-ons, and building the roads. The Incas built like the longest roads in the world, for real. So when you see all of this and you think, hey, those stones were found in this type of area, this region of the world, okay? All of these things like this right here, this Amaru. They say they think it's a doorway, like a time portal or something along those lines. So people have different speculations, but that's what the locals have said about it, all right? But also check out that name, Amaru. And remember, the Amaru are the original tribe of the Americas. The Amaru, and then the Khans, the kings, and that's where American comes from. But don't sleep. This is much, much more ancient than any, anything that we even could think of today. So when you see this and you realize that these stones, the Ica Stones, are in that same region, and you see these type of things, it makes sense that obviously somebody, and they showed you what they look like, somebody was on the next level. They were able to do things that we can't do today, still. And again, they showed you what they look like. And there's definitely more evidence out there of there being ancient human civilizations. Let's check some of that out.
In 1936, a local couple in London, Texas, were walking along a creek when they came upon one of the most puzzling ancient artifacts ever found, a hammer.
It was a prehistoric hammer, if you will, with part of the handle still in place inside some very old rock. And part of the handle actually is starting to go through a process called coalification. It's where you have inorganic material and organic material changing into coal. Now, how old is this hammer? The hammer itself was found in the Travis Formation. It's a concretion of sandstone. And it usually takes about 140 million years for this to form. Who was here 140 million years ago?
So this falls into the category of out-of-place artifacts.
Could a 140-million-year-old hammer really have been discovered in Texas? Skeptics argue that the couple who came upon this hammer must have been mistaken about where they found it. But could there be so-called impossible artifacts whose authenticity is beyond question?
Let's move on to Antelope Springs, Utah, where in 1968, a man named William J. Meister, while looking for trilobite fossils, found the fossil of a human footprint instead. Researchers think the person who left the footprint had accidentally stepped on the trilobite, or it could be intentional if the trilobite really upset him. But anyway, he stepped on the trilobite and then eventually the fossil was formed. The fossil was studied by 3 laboratories and found to be valid, but what was crazy was that the rock in which the fossil was made existed 500 million years before the existence of humankind. Also, trilobites existed for 300 million years but went extinct 240 million years ago. And check this out. The footprint was not just a bare footprint, but actually a person wearing shoes, measuring approximately 10.5 inches by 3.5 inches. The finding was, of course, not without controversy, as some researchers believe that although the trilobite was indeed real, they think the print themselves were formed naturally. To me, the Meister print does look like a shoe print, and actually human footprint fossils are not all that uncommon. For example, the next item in our video, the Zapata footprint, was discovered by a hunter in New Mexico. The hunter was so intrigued by the find that he told his friend, Dr. Don Shockey, who had a strong background in archaeology and anthropology. Dr. Shockey, along with archaeologist Dr. Don Patton, returned to the site and they photographed and analyzed the footprint and determined that the stone the footprint was found in was limestone from the Permian period, some 250 million years ago. The fossil of a finger. According to the journal Science, the oldest human fossil was that of a jawbone discovered in Ethiopia from 2.8 million years ago. But a pretty gross discovery made in a quarry in Texas in the 1980s beats that by about 97 million years. The discovery was that of a fossilized finger, which according to researchers must have been buried in an oxygen-free environment because that would be the only way for soft tissue to fossilize. The finger fossil was x-rayed, which revealed what appeared to be bones and bone marrow. Although researchers can't say for certain which species the finger belonged to, they don't believe it belonged to primates. The fossil was found in Cretaceous rock, which means it is around 100 million years old.
Well, there was a few examples, and here's another one.
Take, for example, the discovery of a carved bell inside a seam of 300 million year old coal by a 10-year-old boy called Newton Anderson in 1944. The bell, which was found in Upshur County, West Virginia, is made of brass and came complete with an iron clapper. It was, however, firmly embedded in coal that formed during the Carboniferous period on Earth. To some fundamentalist Christians, this is evidence that the bell is a so-called antediluvian artifact created in the times before the biblical flood described in Genesis. Their assessment is backed up by the Institute for Creation Research, which had the bell examined at the University of Oklahoma. If they're to be believed, analysis of the bell revealed that it was made of a strange blend of metals that are inconsistent with any modern age design. For what it's worth, Newton Anderson took a polygraph test as an adult, the results of which suggest that he was telling the truth about the bell and the way it was found. I think we can safely assume that the Institute for Creation Research may be a little biased, but it's still a fascinating artifact.
There are so many examples. I'm not going to be able to show you all of them, but there are still a few more out there just to prove that people are a lot older than we've been told. And here's one of them, the Guadeloupe Woman found down in the Caribbean. And man, this is one of those crazy stories, but we can't necessarily verify it, and therefore I can only give it so much credit, but still, just check it out.
Strange out-of-place bones. The Guadeloupe Woman is a well-authenticated discovery which has been in the British Museum for over half a century. In 1812, on the coast of the French Caribbean island of Guadeloupe, a fully human skeleton was found, complete in every respect except for the feet and head. It belonged to a woman about 5 foot 2 inches tall. What makes it of great significance is the fact that this skeleton was found inside extremely hard, very old limestone, which was part of a formation more than a mile, 609 kilometers, in length. Modern geological dating places this formation at 28 million years old, which is 25 million years before modern man is supposed to have first appeared on Earth. Since such a date for a regular person does not fit evolutionary theory, you will not find Guadeloupe Woman mentioned in the hominid textbooks. To do so would be to disprove evolutionary dating of rock formations. When the 2-ton limestone block, containing Guadeloupe Woman, was first put on exhibit in the British Museum in 1812, it was displayed as a proof of the Genesis flood. But that was 20 years before Lyell and nearly 50 years before Darwin. In 1881, the exhibit was quietly taken down to the basement and remains there to this day.
So hopefully this shows you and opens your eyes to the fact that we haven't been told the truth about the real history and the timelines and everything. So it's not far-fetched when Canyon said that the Black Indian has been in the Americas since time immemorial. Listen, that's the truth. And we're going to keep pulling up these facts and things throughout the series. Hope y'all will keep checking back in with me. And just stay tuned for the next episode, y'all. Till the next one. Peace.